Hello. Today, I'd like to make a study and stream on the concept of prudence. I'm going to go on Wikipedia and read an article, thinking aloud. So let's begin. Prudence, Latin prudentia, contracted from providentia, meaning seeing ahead, sagacity, is the ability to govern and discipline oneself by the use of reason. Okay, let's think about this definition for a while. So prudence is the ability to govern and discipline oneself by the use of reason. What does it actually mean? So what kind of ability is it? Is it something natural, or it's an ability which one can develop, as one can develop, for example, some skill? Let's say we may practice some dancing or martial arts, and then we will be able to govern our body, not govern, but actually to control our body in a way which we aren't capable of controlling if we do not practice this activity, dancing, martial arts, etc. So the ability to govern and discipline, but discipline, govern basically means leading, right? So prudence, it's an ability which leads someone, but not just in any random way, but by the use of reason. So the use of reason implies that we do actions and we do anything what we are doing in life, not relying on our senses or our emotions, but analyzing, not even analyzing, but thinking about what we are going to do before we actually do that. So if we make a decision, before to make a decision, we use prudence to weigh whether or not the decision is worth making. And also it refers to any kind of actions, which may be, for example, what I'm doing right here, it's a study and stream. I'm recording it. I have many reasons to do that. And before I started doing study and stream, I thought whether or not it's worth making this study and stream. And I realized that it makes a lot of sense for me. It allows me to practice English. It allows me to communicate with the world. It allows me to understand better whatever I'm studying, since if I only think about it on my own without talking about it, without trying to explain it, without actually looking at my knowledge from outside, since after I record a study and stream, I also can watch it, and then I can see whether or not I was able to explain it or to understand it. And sometimes I see that I can't understand certain concepts, that it bothers me. I go and record more study and streams and study more just to understand better. So I usually, if I study something, I don't give up until I can be convinced that I know the concept perfectly, or at least I know it to the degree which I want to know it. Of course, we can't know, for example, such concept as prudence. It may be studied forever. So if I have my entire life ahead of me and I decided that I want to know the concept of prudence perfectly, I won't be able to achieve my goal, even if I dedicate my entire life, since there are countless articles, countless books written about prudence. There were so many talks throughout the human history. And if I only want to read everything written about prudence, it'll take me hundreds of years. And now every day, there's so much is going on the internet, and people talk about prudence as well. So if I want to know what's going on right now, again, every day I may go on the internet and find something new. So people will discover some new ideas related to prudence, and it'll take, again, it's endless. And I can't say that I know everything, since at the moment when I say it, there's more knowledge produced about prudence. Of course, I may say I can learn general principles, I can learn basic concepts existed in the world and see the evolution of the word, of the concept throughout time, and write a couple of books about it. But still, it seems to be impossible to achieve a perfect understanding. And it refers to every concept. So whenever we want to study something, whenever we want to understand something, we have to be aware that every concept is infinite and it may be developed further. And there's no way to say that this is the absolute knowledge. Of course, there are some basics, and to know the basics, it requires a relatively short amount of time. So I guess to learn everything necessary for holding general conversations about prudence, it takes just a couple of days or maybe a few weeks. But of course, practicing, then it takes lots of time to practice and to implement your knowledge and to integrate your knowledge and your experience. But anyway, so the prudence is the ability to govern and discipline oneself by the use of reason. So use of reason, what is that reason actually means? Like I may read another article on Wikipedia, of course, the reason is the capacity of consciously applying logic to seek truth and draw conclusions from new or existing information. Well, we may substitute the word reason with the word thinking. I guess it's almost the same phenomenon, like reason and thinking. Basically, we discover reasons for our actions before we do our actions, and we see whether or not these actions are worth taking. And prudence, it's a kind of quality or a kind of skill which may be associated with thinking. So before we make decisions, we think about whatever we are going to do. And then we do that, and then we see if our thinking was correct, if we made right analysis, if we understood what we were going to do well, and then an action which took place was kind of, let's say, beneficial for us. We may say that this time, we may reinforce this skill. We may just improve it by seeing when it works and when it doesn't work. So when it doesn't work, we get back and analyze our thinking itself. So if we think about an action beforehand and then understand how to do it, let's say, in a way which we want it to be done, then we do the action, and then we see that everything went well. So next time we use the same principle, we use the same analysis, the same way of thinking. If we made a mistake, or if an action wasn't performed well, or if there were some difficulties, we get back and analyze the mechanism of our decision making. So we think, okay, last time I, let's say, thought about about making a video on prudence, and it went well. So I didn't prepare, but I prepared myself mentally. So I didn't prepare some information which I wanted to talk about. I just prepared myself so that I'll be able to talk for 20, 30 minutes, and it went well. I make some mistakes, I talk more than necessary, but still, on average, I achieved my purposes, since my purposes were to make a brainstorm, to practice my English, to practice my pronunciation. As soon as I was able to maintain a monologue for 20 minutes, it was okay. I've done everything which I decided to do. But yeah, there were some details, of course, which also may be counted. And like next time, probably I have to improve my understanding of these details before I start a video before I start a meditation on prudence. And yeah, and if it went well, next time again I just do the same. But if it went wrong, so for example, I might say, okay, I'm ready to record a video on prudence. I'm ready to record a study and stream. And after I start doing that, I see that I can't actually say anything. So I went on Wikipedia, read the first line, definition, and I see that there's nothing I can say. Well, in this case, if I prepared myself to do a study and stream for half an hour and I have nothing to say about the first sentence, about definition, I'll probably have to reconsider my, my decision. Like I have to get back and see why I thought that I'll be able to talk about it for half an hour. Whereas in reality, as soon as I started talking about it, I've realized that I know nothing and I don't have anything to say. So probably next time I'll first prepare something to say and then go on the internet. But again, in case of studying streams, of course, you shouldn't worry. So if you do the same, if you do studying streams, if you want to understand philosophical concepts by using this method, you shouldn't worry at all about whatever you say. You should worry only about the concepts which you study and the time which you dedicate to these concepts. So if in case of studying prudence, yeah, now I am confident that I will find something to say since I've already dedicated 3 meditations to prudence. So I was thinking about it for more than 2 hours aloud. And of course, I was thinking about it probably for 10 more hours when I was doing my regular daily activities. Anyway, this was a definition. Now let's move forward. It is classically considered to be a virtue, and in particular, one of the 4 cardinal virtues. And in particular, one of the 4 cardinal virtues, which are with the 3 theological virtues, part of 7 virtues. Prudence is an allegorical female personification of the virtue, whose attributes are a mirror and snake, who is frequently depicted as a pair with Justitia, the Roman goddess of justice. Okay. So prudence is a virtue, and virtue, we may think about virtue as a trait or as a quality, which may be, I don't think that there is an agreement on whether or not it may be developed. Some people may think that it's natural, that it's you were born with these virtues, and our purpose is just to well, if you are born with it, you may develop it. But if you are not born with it, there is no way for you to develop prudence. So if you are intrinsically an evil person, there's no way for you to be a kind person. It's one way of looking at it. And another way of looking at it is just understand that we probably may develop all sorts of virtues depending on our ambitions, our goals, our perspectives, our resources, and all sorts of other things. I personally think that it's possible to develop any virtue if necessary. So when we have a goal to develop a certain feature of our character. So let's say we want to be funny, like if it's necessary. Now it's one of the probably one of the most respected virtues to be funny, and people pay lots of money and spend lots of time to learn how to tell jokes, how to be funny, how to be amusing, and it's actually how to be humorous, how to understand humor. It's actually I would say it's not so hard if you have an access to the internet, basically there are limitless knowledge and limitless information dedicated to studying and developing every virtue. So we may say, and by virtue, again, it may be just a part of your character, a certain trait. So if you want to be funny, even if you're stupid, even if you're dull, by pursuing this goal, by deciding, okay, I want to be funny, right? I want to be a clown. So you go on the internet and type questions like, I'll give you an example. So see, I'm not going to, of course, study any virtue right now, since now I'm studying prudence and I'm trying to figure out how to be prudent, how to develop this quality. But let's suppose we want to be funny, how to become funny. So there are, as we can see, many videos here with titles like how to be funny in any conversation, getting a laugh, how to make something funny, something like how to be funny, comprehensive guide to developing a sense of humor, three tips to instantly tell better stories, improve your sense of humor and personality, how to be funny, easily visualized, 5 jokes that kill in any situation, 3 witty jokes to make anyone laugh. So we may see that if you want to develop a particular character, you may say, oh, it's impossible. Okay, I'm very, very stupid person. Whenever I tell a joke, people look at me as if I were an idiot. And I've tried so many times. I've learned new jokes, and I dedicated so much time to to develop this quality, and it didn't work. I'm just such a character that nobody laughs when I tell jokes. Well, yeah, in that case, well, for some people, if you are totally hopeless, yeah, I assume that it may be possible. I even assume that you take right steps and actually dedicate enough attention to be funny, and you still can't do that. But from my point of view, I see that it almost impossible. Maybe it was possible like previously, but now it's almost impossible if you really have an intent. Probably you may say, I want to be funny, but actually it's not your real desire. So you actually don't want to be funny. You want to be admired by people, and you try to seek admiration through presenting yourself as a funny character. In this case, like if you really want to be admired, or if you want to get approval from society, from people through this trait, and it's not your trait, you actually don't want to be funny. See, you may have a kind of cognitive dissonance through, like, you may have contradictory intentions. So you may think, I want to be funny, I want to make people laugh, and I'm trying to do that, and I can't actually achieve that. And you may think that it's impossible to achieve. Some people are just born with this type of trait, this type of character, and some people are funny, and some other people don't. But I think that you do not understand yourself in this case. So you may think that it's something that you really want, but it's not. What you really want is something else, and you just choose a wrong means to achieve what you want. Whereas if you really want to be funny, if it's your real desire, I think there's nothing which may prevent you to develop this type of character. I remember so many people from my life experience who was so funny just naturally, but they weren't. Like, first I thought, wow, this is so exciting. I really like to be around these people, and whenever they were present, I had a very nice time. I mean, for me, it was mostly in my early adolescence, like in my 20s or something. And later, I figured out that basically it's not natural. They actually they amuse others, and like they like to be funny. They didn't study. It's kind of natural, but it wasn't natural in terms of they were born with that. It was just a particular quality of their character which was reinforced throughout their life, whenever they made a joke, or whenever they tried to be amusing, people actually rewarded them for that, and then they developed this quality. But again, now it seems, well, I'm digressing from Prudence to a different topic. Yeah, definitely Prudence is not about being fun and being comical and humorous. It's more about being serious, and that's why now it's unpopular. So to become prudent, of course, if you are prudent, you may be funny on some occasions, but essentially it's exactly the opposite. So you kind of bullish character, and you go and you do only those things which which you think about before, and yeah, you may become a pedant like Kant, for example, or some teachers who are very serious, who do not understand the value of humor, and in some sense, prudence. Sometimes it's actually its enemy is foolishness and stupidity and rashness. And I think that whenever we develop prudence, we also must be aware that it may make us a little weird for other people, and not just weird. It may, if we develop prudence, it's just, let's say, yeah, we certainly like to gain prudence, to develop this trait in our character, we have to sacrifice something else. So, and if we want to be funny and amusing, I guess prudence is not so well, it's not a good trait to work on, right? It may be but we may develop our sense of humor and our whatever part of our character by using prudence. It's, even though it sounds counterintuitive, I guess it's still maybe possible. But anyway, so, and prudence is considered to be a virtue. The question which I raised was, is it possible to develop prudence, considering it as a trait of character? And I think it's possible. So, but there are some opinions and some views on it which contradict to my views. So some people say, no, it's impossible. You have to be born with it. There must be something innate. If you don't have an innate character, you won't be able. And this view was popular for thousands of years. So when we had different classes, like aristocracy, for example, and just the herd. So the herd and peasants and serfs, they were considered as wise by nature. Like they mostly were not able even to think about becoming virtuous and developing prudence, since they believed and they were convinced by their masters to believe that to have virtue, you have to be born in a particular environment, in a family with a long pedigree. And if you are born as a slave or as a peasant or as a serf, there's no way for you to develop prudence. So all you have to do is just work from the morning to the evening and serve to your masters, right? And this view now is quite unpopular, and on internet again, I guess there wouldn't be any video to teach you how to be prudent or how to be funny. Is there any way to be like how to become prudent? Let's just see which kind of videos it will suggest us. Prudent. Yeah, 2-minute warning. Prudence, a misunderstood word. The prudent man, financial wisdom. Yeah, and prudence in finances is in market. It's also one of the implications here in economics, in accounting. There's also some prudence. It's basically an opposite to taking risks. So if you're prudent, you do not take risks. You weigh everything before you make a decision. And it's unpopular nowadays, since I remember a few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, when I was searching quotes for the conversation about risk, I couldn't find any quote. Like I could find very little quotes where there was a view opposing to this risk-taking view. So most of quotes were, "You have to take a risk. Risk is one of the most important things. If you do not take a risk, you do not live life in full potential, and you won't be able to see actually anything if you do not take risk. You are a stupid person. Take a risk." And everybody talks about taking risk, and there was probably one or two quotes out of 100 which I read, and in these hundreds it's all pro risk, and few quotes just you have to be prudent and think before, and risk taking is not the ultimate way of going about life. Anyway, so how to become a consultant despite being a terrible student? Prudent, career development, prudent, meditation and prudence. Oh, this is my video. It's quite unpopular topic. Prudent, becoming a prudent developer, prudent use of antimicrobials. Okay, so what I want to say is that how to be funny if you ask this question on YouTube, at least on YouTube. Well, let's take and see how it's going to turn out on Google. How to become, I guess in here we'll have more information. Yeah, how to be prudent. How does a person become prudent? The art of living, the first step of prudence, growing in prudence, character strength, prudence, and 6 ways to become more prudent financially, how to be prudent, the risk of prudence. There are some questions. Internal deliberation, was 5 steps to practice prudence. Well, let's take a look at these suggestions, these steps. Internal deliberation. As I said before, thinking is crucial to be prudent. Focus on what we know. To be prudent, we can only use the information we have through memories, experience, and knowledge. Put awareness into action. Decide. Take action. Okay. Yeah, I think this second one is particularly stupid advice, since focus on what we know. Well, for me, it isn't prudent, definitely. So there must be some balance between what we know and what we don't know. Even when we talk about something that we do not understand, we may become prudent through this talk. Like for me now, for example, again, to learn something about prudent, like let's say this is my goal here, to learn something about prudent. And if I focus on what I know and talk only about what I know, I won't go anywhere. So I have to talk about something that I don't know, even if it may be risky, since I may say some stupid things which later I'll consider as foolish. But anyway, so that's how I become prudent. So I talk about things, then I realize that whatever I said was silly and foolish. But now I know that I said something foolish exactly because I've said it. If I wouldn't say it, I'll probably keep it in mind and think that this is something smart. But here I'm talking more and more. Even if stupid, it's okay. Next time when I learn, I understand that it is foolish, and then I wouldn't use it. So the point is not to stick to your opinions, but yeah, talk about, like, focus on what we know. Yeah, when we make a decision, we have to account things which we do not know and be aware of them as well. Anyway, so it just on YouTube there's very little information, very little how to become prudent. But on Google we see that there are actually a lot of stuff here. Yeah. Anyway, so it is classically considered to be a virtue, and in particular one of the 4 cardinal virtues. Okay, these 7 virtues are female with mirror and snake, with a mirror and snake. This is Prudence, by the way. This is her snake. This is her mirror. She looks at herself. Yeah, I tried to write a poem this week on Prudence, analyzing, like trying to figure out why she looks at the mirror all the time. And yeah, there was some fascinating idea that Prudence is narcissistic, and it can't make a few steps without confirming her own brilliance, her own whatever. So it's in love with herself. She's in love with herself, and that's why she needs a mirror always to see and confirm that she's beautiful, she's amazing. Well, it's kind of mocking, but anyway, of course there may be many interpretations, and my interpretation I guess it was guided by my desire to write a poem. It wasn't a poem actually. It was kind of meditation, some kind of thinking. So I was walking and tried to make up some it was kind of poem, but it wasn't a poem since it had no rhymes. It was just a meditation, a written meditation. Okay, so justice pair with justice. So here they are, justice and prudence. This is prudence, this is justice. They stay together and represent particular qualities in humans, in people, which may be developed and which guide them and help them to live better life. So essentially, it's all about doing things which you will not regret later. We have all this common vice, let's say, to regret our actions. And Prudence tells us that what's good, what's bad. So when we take Prudence as a guide for our actions, we do not regret what we've done. Or we blame our Prudence. We say, I was thinking about this action for an entire year. And then I started doing, I was thinking about this project, let's say, for a year. And then I started doing it, and I realized that it led me to trouble. And I may blame my Prudence and say, I wasn't prudent enough. Why wasn't I prudent? Or, you may even imagine Prudence as a character. So you may think that Prudence is some kind of, not a part of your character, but just a ghost, right? You may say, oh, okay, like this ghost is, you may have conversations with it. Like if you're a writer, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. So you build a character and you put this character in a particular environment, some linguistical environment, if you will. And then you basically ask this character, or, you actually don't ask the character, you ask yourself, but you may imagine it as a character and see what this character is going to say. So you may, again, there's a decision, you want to do something, and then you imagine Prudence as some woman with mirror and snakes. And then you have a conversation with it. And by conversation, I mean you think. So you're like you are troubled by some particular question. Like let's make an example. So I want to study and I want to communicate with people, but I'm afraid to lose my freedom. So I'm suspicious that this will lead me to somewhere where I want to be. The problem is that if I study a lot, if I record so many studying streams, I may finally reach the point when my studying streams and everything I do will become popular, and people will, ask lots of questions, and they will send me emails, and they'll try to reach me and communicate with me. And I'm sure that for me, one of the most important values is to do whatever I'm doing without being, disturbed by other people. And I know if I have 10, 15, 20 emails every day, or 10, 15, 20 questions on my YouTube page, and people will, advise me something or ask some questions. Yeah, I won't be able to, to answer all these questions, but there will be something in me, some kind of, yeah, I'll consider it as as something bad. That's the problem. It was the problem which I was thinking about more than 10 years ago. So I started writing poetry, and it turned out well almost from the very beginning. In 2011, I already thought that my poetry is amazing, and it was amazing. And I was thinking, if now I'll become popular and famous, and like if people will come and ask me so many questions, I'll lose my freedom. I'll have to be a slave of the masses to answer all these questions, and I won't be able to ignore them probably. So I was thinking, will I be able to ignore all the whatever questions, and just to ignore what's going on? And yeah, I came to the conclusion that it's like this is very terrible. So if I become famous, it's not what I really want. What I want is just continue studying, continue developing my language, my understanding. But I also see that it's impossible. So if I do it for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, I'll finally reach the place where there some connection with people, with not just few people, but with hundreds and thousands and probably millions of people. And I don't want this connection. I don't want to be bothered and to be distracted all the time. I want to go further. I have hundreds of different concepts ahead of me, which I'd like to study. And I have like countless books which I'd like to read. And now I have also countless courses of lectures which I like to watch. And I have so many ideas which I'd like to, talk about and write about, and write my journals, continue doing all this stuff. And it all requires time. And as soon as there are just one or a few questions, or some people just come and want to make friends or to communicate, it's very hard. It's like when there are just few people, it's okay. But when there's like, let's say 10 people, I don't want to have 10 people on Facebook or on Wiki who constantly write me some messages. So I'm bothered when there's just one person writes me a message a week. And I'm not saying I'm bothered. So it's okay to dedicate 10 minutes or 15 minutes to answer a question. But I don't like this communication when people like write things every day and ask how are you doing every day. It's just terrible for me. I can't maintain that. But now I see if there will be meaningful communication. For example, now I'm presenting myself as a kind of profound thinker, and at some moment people start realizing that what I'm doing is like a serious project. So I'm I'm just studying in depth philosophy, psychology, sociology, science, and cultures, and anthropology, all sorts of literature, poetry, art. And there will be some questions, and it will be very hard to kind of to stay away from it. Yeah, I always thinking that whenever it starts, I may run away in a different language, as I did with Russian, because in Russian it was one of the reason, kind of subtle reason why I ran away, why I abandoned my native language, and now I don't communicate with people in Russian at all. So it was because I reached this level. So it was so like my conversations became unbearable. So almost every day I could find people like not bothering me, but like, impeding my personal space and asking something. And yeah, and I was also, of course, engaged in all this. It wasn't just one from one side. But as soon as I stopped using Russian, like for half a year, I guess it all disappeared. And now in English, it's moving in this direction. So I'm quite confident that if I continue doing what I'm doing for half a year or for a year, there will be a big audience. And by big, of course, I use my personal standards. But for me, 10 people, it's a big audience. I mean, if it's 10 people who pay attention to what I'm doing and listen to what I'm saying and ask questions and actively engage in interactions, it's a big audience, and this may be a problem. So that's why I'm thinking about, staying as far away from engaging in like real. And at the same time, I have a counter, another motivation, which is like developing, for example, a podcast, philosophical dialogues. So I want to communicate with people, and I want to reach the wisest and most virtuous, let's say, but not an ancient term, but by virtuous. Yeah, I don't think it's a good word. And prudence is if I know that it's essentially like I'm not I'm not a character who is I'm not a prudent man, and I'm not a virtuous man, and I'm not a wise man, even though I'm pursuing all these virtues for more than a decade with serious intention. I'm still not there, and I don't like people who are virtuous and prudent and moral. I think they lack a lot of spontaneity, a lack of emotionality and sense of humor. They're too serious. Like one of the biggest biggest reason why I don't like virtuous people and all these moralists, that they take themselves so seriously. So they think that because of their experience, because they dedicated so much time to develop their qualities, to develop their virtues, prudence, justice, courage, whatever, they are much better than average people, and everybody for them, of course, becomes average. And I find in myself this quality as well. So I dedicated the fucking decade like working on all virtues, writing daily, thinking, analyzing everything, doing philosophy, reading hundreds of books. And I see in myself this, like I look down on people most of the time. And I know it's terrible, but I can't do anything with that. What I can do is basically using self-irony and make fun of my own sense of superiority, and developing the opposite virtues. Like for example, Castaneda is of a great help, like self-importance, this idea of losing self-importance, I'm constantly working on it, and still, yeah, it's still sometimes I find myself being so terrible in, in opposing my own sense of superiority, since I can't do anything with that. I'm serious about learning. I'm serious about education. I'm doing it for more than a decade, and I'm doing it better than anybody I know. So I sacrificed everything to, to become prudent, to pursue philosophy, and I'm successful here. That's like in my personal standards, which are enormously high standards. So I don't know anybody who have. Again, I don't know personally. Of course, on the internet, you may say there are some people who have the same standards, but personally, I don't know anybody who have even closer standards in terms of becoming wise and intelligent and educated. So I invested not just 10,000 hours in my education, but probably 100,000 hours, if it's possible. Basically, what I'm doing for the last decade, since 2007, I'm developing my education, working on my virtues, intelligence, and obviously, I have something to, like, this high. Aristotle calls it high-mindedness, and of course, I see that there are so many flaws in my character which still require work and still require attention, and I'm working on them. But the idea again, this type of like self-awareness, where I am aware that I'm aware that I possess this unbearable quality, or what is it? Is it the quality? Like, it looks, I'm aware that from outside it looks as if I'm boasting about myself all the time, saying I'm so smart, I know so many things, I've read so many stuff, I watched so many like lectures, I can speak two languages, and I develop a new I developed a new language just in a matter of few years. And yeah, I'm so intelligent, I'm so prudent, and blah blah blah. So on one side, I see how I am perceived from the perspective of others, but what they don't see, like I see all of this as well. So I see that it's not based on some, you hear on the internet that to be wise is cool, and you go and tell everybody that you are a wise person without doing anything. I have thousands of notes of daily journaling, working on my prudence, nonetheless. And if you read these notes, you'll be you'll be surprised how, I mean, if you develop a picture of me that I'm a person who boasts about my knowledge and about my experience, and then you go and see what I actually write in my journals, where I attack myself and say, like, I'm so stupid, I'm terrible, and this is why. And then I describe, some months of playing video games and attacking, trying to figure out how to quit them, trying to fight with my stupidity, and then finally winning. And then again, for half a year, just working patiently on developing my knowledge, reading books, analyzing what I'm reading, meditating, doing yoga, doing exercises, running, going to the gym, conducting meetings, developing new habits, working on all of this, and then for a few months again falling down and doing some terrible things, watching porn, playing video games, jerking off, and then again for like writing about all of this on a daily basis, trying to fight it, and then again winning, then again working for a year, developing my virtues, and again losing, and it's just 10 years. And throughout these years, there is a constant development in language. So I learned to understand much better everything I'm doing, how to describe it. I developed new, conceptual understanding, conceptual networks of, different frameworks from different sciences: psychology, philosophy, sociology, physics. And so it's my life from inside. It's nothing which I can compare with, since some famous scientists who are now here on the internet, most of them I can't take any of them seriously, since when I listen to what they're saying, basically they're kind of, they are people who try to win public's approval by, doing science. Not, of course, all of them, but many scientists, they don't pursue science because of curiosity or because of their real interests. They do it because it's just a popular thing to do. And most of them, they do not understand science at all. What they can say and what they can, reveal, it's kind of game. So it's very, they're like actors, most of them. And it's a funny game. I don't blame anybody, but the point, like, I have this inner desire to study, and I'm working on it for, as I said, for 10 years, and I'm not doing it to get some, well, maybe I do to get some attention, but and I'm just not successful, and these people are successful, right? Maybe it's also maybe the case, but anyways, just, yeah, I'm talking too much. I digressed from, this prudence, but perhaps it wasn't prudent, and perhaps it's not prudent to upload this video on YouTube. But since I've decided to see myself without, being, without pretending that I'm better than who I am really, who I am really. Okay, my grammar today is not as good as usual. Yeah, since I decided to see who I really am, and if I say something silly, it's okay. I'm trying to be better. I'm really investing a lot of time and energy to be better. If I'm still bad, well, it's not my fault. Right? Okay, maybe it's my fault. Maybe I have to do something else, but I don't know what. That's what I'm trying to figure out here. Just what can I do to become more, to become a better person. Yeah, it's not self-hatred. I wouldn't say that I hate myself. I'm on the opposite pole. But oftentimes when I talk and I see that I say something irrelevant and I go aside and make some stupid comments, or when I complain a lot, and it also happens, there's a sense that, oh, this is stupid, I shouldn't do that. But then again, I may keep it inside and I may say, okay, this is stupid, I've done something inappropriate, and I shouldn't show it to anybody. I should keep it inside. So if I keep it inside, nobody will see it, and I'm safe. So this is what I like. Here I'm doing exactly the opposite work. So I'm saying, okay, it's the wrong way to keep it inside. The best way is to show it and see, look, I'm not gonna conceal anything. So if I'm stupid, I'm gonna show all my stupidity. I'm gonna show it, and this is the best way of getting rid of it. Since the next time, if I say something stupid again, I'll show it again. So my stupidity doesn't have any place to hide. Whereas other people might say, okay, like my private life, my thinking, this is the place where I may hide. And by I, of course, I mean stupidity and foolishness. That's the one of the, let's say, uniqueness of my work here. So all people try to hide, not all, but many people try to hide their foolishness inside and show only their wisdom, their prudence, their knowledge, their experience, like this guy, right? So focus on what we know. To be prudent, we can only use the information that we know, that we have through memories, experience, and knowledge. Well, I don't think it's exactly relevant, but you see the idea. So people try to show the best parts of themselves and to conceal the worst parts. And I'm doing exactly the opposite here. So I'm showing the worst part of myself. Well, actually, I don't show the worst part. I'm trying to not be afraid of showing everything as it is, even if it's terrible, even if I could do better, but I didn't, even though I don't believe that there's any way to do anything differently. So granted that I started this studying stream at the same moment, in the same, basically in the same time, with the same mindset, after having the same sleep and preparing in the same way. There's no way for me to say anything else. So everything what I say is exactly what has to be said. There's no way to escape. And there's, of course, my prudence tells me that I shouldn't hide it. If it's stupid, if I complain, if I make fool of myself, this is what I should show. Next time to be better. If I hide it, next time I'll do the same foolishness again. And yeah, this is the process. This foolishness, to get rid of foolishness, to get rid of your own stupidity, it's better to show it. It's better to be not afraid of showing it. Since if you're afraid, it hides inside and it'll just eat your character, and it will destroy all your virtues. Whereas when you allow it to go, you say, this is, you don't, the point is, you may say, oh, but how can I do that? Like, people will laugh at me. They will think I'm an idiot, or they will think I'm a bad person. But doesn't matter what people think. What's really important is whether or not you identify with it. And if you do not identify with your stupidity, if you say, this is a part of my nature, I'm working on it, I'm trying to be better, I'm doing lots of things to improve it. If it doesn't work, well, I'll find a way to make it work. This is the way. But you may say, no, like, there are some people, see, they're smart, they speak smartly, they countless lectures, they don't say anything unnecessary, they always consistent, and they're always wise, and whatever they say, it's so wonderful. I want to be like them. Well, yeah, but did you have real natural conversations with these people? Like, do you really know them? Can you say that there are some people who really prudent all the time? On the personal level, I never had conversations with people who are like always smart and always wise and know what they're talking about. Most of the time, it's exactly the opposite. So even people who, anyway, I'm digressed. I want to just say a few more words about this Thomas Aquinas stuff and what I didn't finish even this preface, the introduction. Okay, let's go briefly through the introduction. The word derives from the 14th century Old French word prudence, which in turn derives from the Latin prudentia, meaning foresight, sagacity. Actually, Latin prudentia, a foresight, foreseeing, sagacity, practical judgment. So there's much more than just foresight, sagacity. Contraction of providentia, foresight. So when we think about it differently than ancient people thought, for ancient Greeks, it was more of like seeing the future, being able to predict what's going to happen and act upon your predictions. And prudence, basically, if you are good at it, if you see beforehand what's going to happen afterwards, you have prudence. If not, well, you don't have it. Anyway, it is often associated with wisdom, insight, and knowledge. In this case, knowledge, I guess, plays a part here. So we may say that the simplest example is that, touching the stove, you know that it's going to burn your fingers, and you don't do that. You have knowledge. You don't need actually to derive this knowledge from experience. You may see somebody else touches it and burns his fingers, and then you make a belief that it's not a good thing to do. You don't need to make an experiment to see whether or not it works. Of course, it doesn't work for all cases, but in empirical, like in empirical world, yeah, it's useful to understand that there are so many things which you may learn from observing people's stupidity and not doing what they are doing. Whereas sometimes you have to have certain experience. I don't think the point is, of course, somebody who touches the stove. Yeah, we may just think about it for a while. So somebody who touches the stove, the hot stove, and burns his fingers, he'll learn much more than somebody who just sees it and infer from it that it's a bad thing to touch the stove. Since when you really touch, it gets deep into you, and next time you will have a natural instinct. So you will not touch it, not because you will not think about it. Your body will not just your body will learn from experience. Whereas if you just see it, yeah, next time, well, you won't touch the same stove, but you may do something similar. You may touch something which may destroy your entire arm. And yeah, I mean, this kind of experience here, it's it's invaluable. It teaches much more, but some people don't even learn from their experience, so they repeat the same mistakes over and over. In language, yeah, I guess this is one of my vices. So I make mistakes, and I'm aware of them, and I still continue making them. Well, there's of course I have a reason for that. I know that I may not make mistakes if I don't speak at all, but I know that if I speak a lot over a decade, I'll finally learn to speak without mistakes. And this is a fine journey. And I'm trying to learn it in a natural way instead of preparing every sentence beforehand, like thinking about every sentence which I'm going to say. No, for me, it's just natural flow of emotions and reason, and I know that it'll gradually lead to the point where I'll be able to speak fluently without mistakes, but it takes much more time than I, of course, expected in the beginning. So it took me how many years? Like it took me 6 years to learn to write in Russian, in my native language, after I graduated from a school, from a college, and from a university where I actually was passionate about, learning. Even though I didn't learn much, but still I always had this passion towards learning. And yeah, and I didn't learn anything in school, in university, and in college in terms of writing, and only practice, like 6 years of practice, of daily practice, allowed me to understand how to write without mistakes. And speech also, when I started speaking to the camera, I couldn't speak at all. My language was so terrible. Of course, I could speak, I could say some, memorized stuff, or I could talk about things which I could understand and which I had a lot of experience of, but I couldn't actually speak well, and my grammar was terrible, and I used so much cursing and profanity. But when I started working on my speech in Russian, it took me again from 2013 to 2017 when I shifted finally to English. Like in 4 years, I got to the point where I could speak well in Russian, and it wasn't actually well. There was still a lot of work to do, which I finally decided, okay, I'll drop here, and it's enough since I can speak much better than everybody I know, and perhaps at that time I could speak as well as everybody, like in Russian, who developed. Like I watched some videos of some professors, and I was aware, not because I had a fancy idea in mind, but because I made daily practice and recording my videos on a daily basis and talking about stuff which I was learning, explaining them, analyzing them, developing my style. So I was aware that my language was much better already than the language of some of professors before I shifted to English. And what was I talking about? I lost an idea. But anyway, so the mean per site. Now, how did I lost an idea? That's important. I have to check it out next time. Usually when I talk, I'm aware once again that from an outside perspective, it may be almost impossible to understand what I'm saying, but what's important for me is to understand myself. So in here, when I'm speaking, I'm aware of the general line, how I started, what was going on. And my goal here is to understand myself, not to be understood by other people. Yeah, and I was talking about developing. It took a lot of years to develop my grammar. And I developed it through speech and through making countless mistakes. And I know by experience how much it takes to develop a good speech, even if you speak in your native language. And I know that it's impossible to do through learning, which we have in schools. At least for me, from a character, from personality which I have, it's impossible to read about certain rules and practice them, memorizing them and repeating them over and over. It may make sense, but essentially the point is to learn to speak naturally and to be not afraid of saying anything and not to be silent and speak as much as you like about whatever you like, even if you make mistakes, even if you are, look stupid. It doesn't matter. Gradually, if you practice, if you have a certain time dedicated to developing your speech, and if you talk for an hour, for a few hours, you finally realize that it's actually a good thing to be able to analyze your experience through self-talk or through writing, for that matter. And gradually it evolves. See, the point is you need just 5 years of talking. Imagine yourself doing what I'm doing right now. Just try to do that. If you have no experience, you'll see immediately that it's first of all, it's very hard, then it's terrible, and then you have lots of emotions which will tell you, no, don't do that, it's silly, especially don't publish it on YouTube. But if you get through it, if you are able to, let's say, follow a long-term strategy, so you'd say, okay, the first time it's bad, and let's do it once more. You don't need to publish it. You might store it on your computer, or you might delete it, or you might not even record yourself, but just try to speak for half an hour, for an hour, and see, examine your knowledge, examine what you're doing on a daily basis. Few years. It takes few years to get from an ordinary person to someone who can really, be considered as some above average, let's say. Yeah, and I'm aware how much time it takes. That's why I'm practicing this speech, this studying streams. So they allow me to speak about whatever I like to speak. I'm not teaching anybody here. I'm not trying to persuade anybody to do anything. Basically, my way of self-knowledge, my way of self-learning. I study myself through speaking and analyzing afterwards whatever I said and how I said that. And I'm learning to do it better every time, to use better grammar, to use better, words and understanding. And I'm aware that it takes a lot of time. That's the point. So it's not a matter of weeks or months. It's a matter of years and decades. So I hope that in 10 years, if I continue this studying streams, I'll get to the place where I want to be, and when I know that I can be. That's the idea. So I know I already have this experience in Russian. I know how it feels when you just start to record yourself and you can't say anything, you sound like a dummy. And then you talk for a few years and you see, oh, now I got a little confidence and now I'm doing a little better, but there's paths which became clear for me, and I want to follow these paths, and it'll take a few more years to to get there. I'm aware of the same in English. I know that the place where I'm right now, it's basically just the beginning. There, let's say, if we measure it on a scale from 0 to 10, now I'm somewhere at 4, and I know how to get to the 10, and I don't know if there anything beyond the 10. Well, definitely no, since I watch lots of guys talking on the internet, and I'm always ashamed of myself since I compare myself to these guys who basically study communication for decades, and they speak just their native language, and I listen to them and wow, I can, like, you, in spite of my attempts, which I've been making for years, I'm so far from them. My language is so cheap. I make so many mistakes. I complain a lot about these fucking mistakes. I do not ask questions. Why there are so few questions in my speech? Okay, so sagacity, foresight. It is often associated with wisdom, insight, and knowledge. Yeah, knowledge, like to have knowledge. Yeah, the idea which I tried to cover the last 10 minutes was about knowledge and having knowledge. And what does it mean actually to have knowledge? So one thing is when you do something, another thing is when you see how somebody else is doing something. And knowledge based on your experience is much more valuable than knowledge which you derive from observation. Even though sometimes it's wise and prudent to not repeat somebody else's mistake and somebody else's experience. So, of course, in many cases, you may learn from observation, but it's not so deep and it will not touch you on a profound level, perhaps. Okay, in this case, the virtue is the ability to judge between virtuous and vicious actions, not only in a general sense, but with regard to appropriate actions at a given time and place. So judge between vicious and virtuous actions. Okay, is it what I'm doing now virtuous or vicious? Am I both? Yeah, there's so much. It's a mixture of virtuous and vicious things. On one side, I'm boasting about myself, how smart I am, and how much I'm doing. On the other side, I'm complaining, saying, damn, my language is so cheap, I can't say anything. It sounds so weird. And the third thing, I'm trying to figure out the concept of prudence and try to learn something. Then I also like publish it on YouTube and try to attract people's attention and say, look how smart I am, just listen to me and make comments. And on the other side, I say, no, it's all stupid. Don't make any comments. I actually don't want any communication. I'm studying here in a serious way, and I'm sure that there's very few people who can actually do the same work and with whom it will be it will be valuable for me to communicate. But then I talk about studying streams, and I'm talking about my philosophical dialogues, which I want to record, and the main purpose of which is to reach the wisest people on earth and have conversations with them and learn from them. There's so many contradictions, but still, yeah, it's funny. It's very funny. The point is, of course, that I'm trying to present it as a serious stuff, as some kind of educational project or some sort of, search for wisdom. Whereas it may be a very funny, and if I'll change my if I shift my assemblage point using Castaneda's terminology, the place of irony, yeah, it's very fun just to to see how stupid I am and how easily I can be confused by simple ideas, and then make fun of myself. Of course, it's also like, oh, okay, it's stupid, but it's fun, and it's actually fun to do. I mean, to record studying streams if you're a stupid person, it's so fun. Try it, try it and see, just for the purpose of laughing at yourself. Don't need to show it to anybody else. Just take a concept which you do not understand, like prudence, which is probably one of the most misunderstood concepts, or wisdom, and just do a studying stream. Talk about it for an hour and see what exactly you are going to say. Of course, the point is that you can't do even that. Like most of the people, it's impossible. So if they have to talk about something, they have to know what they're talking about. Otherwise, it's impossible. And this is, I guess, this is the curse of our, humanity, that we teach our, from the very childhood, we all like to speak to ourselves, and until we go to school and socialize, we always talk to like our toys and to ourselves and try to understand the world by by speaking to ourselves. But then we like put it all inside, and we develop like inside we develop self-image, and we keep it inside, and we're so afraid of showing our vices. We become like this tree of knowledge. So we eat fruits from tree of knowledge, and then we understand that we're naked actually, and we have to hide ourselves, and that's what we are doing. But we like the cloth which we use to hide our bodies, it's nothing in comparison with our appearance versus our essence. So we hide everything inside and say that we're much better people than we are, but inside we're terrible, and nobody shows this. Like everybody is afraid to show their stupidity, their whatever malevolence, their vices, since it's inappropriate. But the only way to get rid of these vices is to see them in yourself and analyze them and do some work. But anyway, although prudence itself does not perform any actions and is concerned solely with knowledge, all virtues had to be regulated by it. Okay, prudence is a kind of regulator, a manager of all other virtues. Distinguishing when acts are courageous as opposed to reckless or cowardly is an act of prudence. And for this reason, it is classified as a cardinal pivotal virtue. Pivotal. What's the correct pronunciation? Pivotal. Yeah, like it's written as if it must be pronounced as pivotal, but I'm not sure. It's pivotal. Pivotal. The problem with English, like, see, like why it's not pi, right? So there's the first pi, and then there's open syllable, but still it's pivotal. It's not pivotal.
Pivotal.
Okay, doesn't matter. So pivotal virtue. In modern English, the word has become increasingly synonymous with cautiousness. In this sense, prudence names a reluctance to take risks, which remains a virtue with respect to unnecessary risks, but when unreasonably extended into overcautiousness, can become the vice of cowardice. Yeah, makes sense. In the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle gives a lengthy account of the virtue phronesis, or phronesis, traditionally translated as prudence, although this has become increasingly problematic as the word has fallen out of common usage. More recently, phronesis has been translated by such terms as practical wisdom, practical judgment, or rational choice. Okay, but about Aristotle and phronesis, so now I'm working on Aristotelian book Nicomachean Ethics, and I actually got to the to the chapter where he discussed prudence. It's almost in the middle of the book, so there's 375 pages, and I am now on the page 200, and there Aristotle starts discussion about intellectual virtues. So before he talks a lot about other types of virtues like truthfulness, friendliness, courage, temperance, liberality, magnificence, high-mindedness, gentleness. Yeah, I guess we'll take all these virtues to, like, maybe not all of them, but most of them we'll definitely take for our conversations at the speaking club. So for the next few months, or maybe for an entire year, I don't know how long it's going to take us. But yeah, I'm now really concerned with studying these Aristotelian concepts of virtue in a kind of in depth, and I want to make many other studying streams and other virtues. And I don't know how far are we going to go. Yeah, probably now at least we'll have, and how many 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 plus cardinal virtues. Yeah, I guess we'll have at least half a year in our speaking club, like talking about virtues and analyzing each virtue and probably developing a broad conceptual network of these virtues. And I'm going to read this about prudence, discussion of Aristotle about prudence today, but I'm not sure that I'm going to do it now. Yeah, yesterday I mentioned in my meditation on prudence that I'm going to read partially Wikipedia's article and partially Aristotelian book, but now I see that I don't have so much time, and yeah, I talked too much, I digressed, but it's okay. Again, for me it's fun, it's not a big deal. I'm not making some short videos with tips and tricks how to be prudent, being clear, saying everything, summarizing all greatest thinkers' ideas in 5 sentences and 5 paragraphs. Yeah, I'm sure that I'll no. If I write, I usually try to be eloquent and precise and clear. But in speech, I allow myself, especially like, see, the point is that sometimes, of course, no, I don't do it all the time. You may, for example, watch this stream and say, "Oh, this man talks so much side, and he doesn't actually cover the topic. He talks about himself, and he complains, and he do this and he do that." But you see, the point is studying streams, it's more about me. It's about my personal experience. And I'm trying to just learn to feel good speaking about concepts which I study. And this is my purpose. I'm not here teaching anybody. I'm not here trying to point out at a particular thing and tell you what you have to do. I'm doing the thing for myself. And of course, you might do the same thing. And here it's my complaining, of course, it's mostly superficial, and it's not based on my actual intention. Since here it does this is right, this is what I'm doing here, like making as many mistakes as possible, talking as much as possible about prudence, saying whatever I want to say, just observing my spontaneous speech act behavior, and learning how to do it better like every time. And if I do not cover the concept of prudence, if I'm weak, if there's so much stupidity there, it's okay. It must be better in the future. Yeah, I think one of my intentions is, of course, to improve it. And to improve it, I want to be able to take, let's say, the introduction and finish it in 10 minutes, and then the next 10 minutes to go and read this first paragraph, let's say, next 10 minutes the second paragraph, and then in an hour I'll cover the entire Wikipedia's article and give you a summary. But it's not to do that. I may record another video and just simply read and translate it in my own way. But it's not what I really want. I want here just to feel free and talk about prudence and to integrate it in my personal experience. And here it's okay to be vague and valuable, let's say. Not voluble, not valuable, but voluble. Voluble? Voluble. Yeah, voluble. Talking a lot or talking quickly. Yeah, voluble. Okay. So talking too much. In other occasions, for example, in a conversation, yeah, it may be wise. See, the point is that when I record studying stream, for example, I know what I'm doing, and I know that one of my purposes is just to talk as much as possible, and it shouldn't be necessarily related to the concept. And when I have a conversation, if I do the same in a conversation, I consider it, it's not wise. It's not wise, it's wise. This wise and wise in English, in Russian, they sound almost the same. So when I say wise and wise, my in Russian we do not have this W sound. So when we say u, we have u sound like u, it's not vum, right? No, vum, vice. Yeah, perhaps I have to learn to differentiate better these sounds. And it seems like sometimes you want to say wise and you say vice. And it may like I wouldn't be able to hear the difference. So if I would be able if I hear carefully, but if I listen carefully to the sound, but it's very hard to distinguish. Anyway, just a remark. Few more words about Thomas Aquinas, like this first sentence, and then I'll finish the study stream. So Prudence was considered by the ancient Greeks as Prudence was considered by the ancient Greeks and later on by Christian philosophers, most notably Thomas Aquinas, as the cause, measure, and form of all virtues. It is considered to be the auriga virtutum, or the charioteer of the virtues. Charioteer. What's charioteer? Like a car? Charioteer. One of the drives of a chariot. Okay. The driver of a chariot.
Charioteer.
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 Okay, we're Americans. Charioteer. Charioteer. It is considered to be the auriga virtutum, or the charioteer of the virtues. Yet the cause, measure, and form of all virtues. Yeah, Thomas Aquinas. I like this sentence since we may think about why is it the cause of all virtues? So we may ask, can we have any other virtue without prudence, without the ability to see clearly whether the action is good or bad, or whether something is good or bad? Measure, again, cause and measure and form. Okay, it doesn't matter. So the interesting sentence, I'll probably put it down to discuss later in the conversation. Yeah, now I've almost done with analyzing the topic. I mean, I've done 3 meditations on it. The first 2 random meditations, which I made without preparing anything beforehand. So the first meditation was basically I was sitting and trying to wrap my mind around the concept of prudence. Then the second meditation, I felt a little bit more confident, and I talked in both cases for 20-25 minutes. Then yesterday I wrote some questions and discussed these questions for an hour, answering on every question and trying to again to speculate, to ponder on these questions. And today I recorded a study in stream. Tomorrow, yet they'll probably go on and read Aristotle, read his account on prudence. Moreover, I'm going to write a paper on prudence. By paper, I mean I'm going to put everything on. Do I have something like that here? No, I don't have. So basically, I prepare for every conversation. I prepare a paper. When there are questions, there's some part from grammar. So I use some phrasal verbs, and I use some grammatical constructions. Like this time, I'm going to explain how to use conjunctions, coordinating conjunctions in a compound sentence. It's like some conjunctions like and then, so, for. So I use them. I used some words from the concept of prudence. So I take basically prudence, and like all examples in using these conjunctions are are based on the words related to the idea of prudence. And mostly it's just prudence, Prudence itself. So I use like some adjectives related to Prudence, some verbs. I build some sentences and explain how they work. So, and I put it all down on paper. And also there are some quotes from famous authors. And besides, I'd like to include there some adjectives and nouns and verbs, which may be relevant to the concept, some idioms, and probably some, even some paragraphs from Aristotle. I'll probably put them in, questions, paragraphs, quotes, words, grammar. Yeah, usually it takes me a couple of hours to prepare a paper. And then we'll have a conversation tomorrow. If you want to come, don't hesitate. 4 p.m. Nikitina 500, Nikitina 41, office 514. See you there. Bye-bye.